welcome to Night Clerk Radio, episode 116, where we are closing out Spooky Month with a not terribly spooky album, but it's too good to pass up. We're doing our new music episode, but there's such a clear choice for both of us of an album we wanted to do that it's really just a spotlight episode on one album. We are doing Lego Castle, 1979 to 1998 by Dreamcastle. I guess as by the time this releases, it will have come out towards the beginning of the month, but it's maybe a week prior to recording. And oh man, it's interesting. There's a lot to talk about. Dreamcastle, of course, has done other albums that we've talked about, most notably Amy Wave, which is, I think, on the Utopia District's 2023 Best Of, I believe, which is like an amazing concept album about Sonic's girlfriend / not girlfriend, Amy. And they're back again with, it's an album, you know, there's music on Bandcamp, but it's really best consumed in its YouTube form.
Yes.
Which is an experimental film. It has all the music from the album, but there's like interstitials of, you know, footage they shot of a Lego wizard telling stories to his pet. I think a dragon might have a specific name for the type of dragon it is. But yeah, it's a pet dragon telling him bedtime stories about other Lego heroes.
Quests to get a shroud and, you know,
exactly
save the kingdom. Like, yeah.
These very grand quests in the kingdom. And each of these characters actually was a different cassette release, because there are variations of the cassette that was like, you know, like the Black Falcon cassette, the Black Knights cassette, the Forestman cassette for each of these different Lego sets and characters they talk about. Again, it is like a film. It has a beginning, middle, and end, more than some films we watch at movie night. And it just really is like an incredibly high effort piece of media. And it's getting the recognition I think it deserves. If you look at on YouTube, you know, these metrics aren't everything, but it's got like 20,000 views already, which for a vaporwave, like dungeon synth concept album, super impressive.
Yeah.
It's really resonated with people in some way.
Oh yeah. I mean, Dreamcastle only has like 2,600 subscribers. So like it's clearly picking up steam on YouTube, and hopefully this episode helps. They really do deserve this kind of recognition, because the film itself is like this mixed media approach, because like the wizard seems to be like mocapped animation, like they shot a real person and mocapped it to make him into a little Lego wizard, but like the dragon is, or it could have been a costume. It's kind of hard to tell because there's a really good VHS filter effect over everything, and the dragon is like a little hand puppet, and there's like 3D animation done with Blender. There's old commercials. There's a mocked up video game, or perhaps a real Lego video game. There's some real video games later on, like Ghosts and Goblins, but like, just, it's so varied. There's just a little bit of everything in it. And it really encapsulates the toy for your imagination. You know, you can build out your imagination with Lego. So
that's interesting. I always assumed the little Lego guy was also just a Blender animation, and then they just have him talking.
I mean, he could be a Blender animation, but it just seems very well animated if it is. I just like
they're very good at what they do, perhaps.
Yeah. Mocap stuff has become so cheap or affordable, you know, not like
a VTuber type setup.
Just a guy on a suit in front of a green screen is all you need. I've seen some tutorials on how to do it, and like they've gone out of their way to make it affordable so YouTubers can, you know, generate a lot of footage that way. So,
so getting into this album conceptually, other things that, just before we get into like music specifically, I love how consistent the theming is across this whole album. You know, all the track names are Lego sets, so they have the little Lego identifier numbers. So it'd be like, you know, 375 Castle, 6010 Supply Wagon, etc. I think the blend of the footage they shot themselves with the commercial footage really works very well. I think that's a really good job putting that together. But at the same time, I love how this album isn't constrained by genre in any way, at least in terms of like musical component, because it advertises itself. I guess it's a strong word, but it's a dungeon synth odyssey. That's sort of how it's described in the YouTube description. But boy, it's got a little bit of everything in there. And I really, really like that they didn't just do 34 tracks of, you know, depressive silences or whatever. There's like VGM stuff. There's like, and all kinds of VGM stuff, from like Minecrafty type ambient synth to, I always call it Streets of Rage drums. That's just my term for like video gamey, like halftime shuffle drums. That like sort of early 90s R&B. Big, huge synths, kind of melancholic, nostalgic synthwave towards the end.
Oh, yeah.
Country music's in there. There's all kinds of instrumentation. Just so much is brought in. That it's so varied.
I mean, for me, it's like the commonality is the synthesizer as a instrument of imagination, of fantasy. Like, that's the only. But yeah, this is really like a dip into a lot of different subgenres. There's dungeon synth, but there's also like vaporwave kind of ambient tracks. There's a couple of synthwave, like outrun kind of tracks, at least one or two. But one of the things I really liked was how there's some tracks clearly modeled on, inspired by medieval courtly music, you know, really going into the theming of the album quite well. In fact, one of the bonus tracks on the Bandcamp is based on a medieval French folk song. So, But there's a lot of also use of synthesizer as accompaniment for like sound effects or replacement for sound effects.
Yeah.
Because this is a realm of magic and wizards and supernatural creatures. So there's, you know, very wizardly sounds and ghostly sounds and that kind of thing.
It's very cool. I definitely want to talk about the music. But before that, I embarrassingly forgot my own addition to this episode. Feel free to speak up sooner next time. But
you were on a roll, man.
I know. It's fine. So with that enticing little intro to Dreamcastle, we were also going to this episode do some shout outs, because even just talking about one episode, one album each for a new music episode, I don't feel like I talk about everything I want to talk about. And I think you sort of agreed. There's just a lot coming out. It's very difficult to keep up with everything. And I think we're going to take some time to just mention some other albums. And I'm sorry this is awkwardly placed after the intro to the main album. We'll do it better next month. It's okay. It's a free show. What do you want? So I guess I'll start. You want to just alternate?
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Sounds
All
good.
right, cool. So my first shout out, I'm going to do Death Romantique by Skeleton Lipstick on Hush Tone Records. Just give a 2-sentence blurb. It is a wonderful, deep, dark witch house, dark synth album. Hush Tones we talked about before with the lighting the candles. So it's in that style of that label, just trying to do something different with dark synth, and I think it succeeds. And I also, liked Skeleton Lipstick's track on some compilations that we had done previously. So it was cool to get to hear a whole album, and it's really, really good.
Nice.
What you got?
Yeah, my first album is a survival horror by Shim Noise. This is a Silent Hill 2 as a genre. Not as like it's all original compositions, but it is very evocative of the style of music you would encounter in Silent Hill 2, but not the boss fight music, all the sort of like overworld ambient tracks. And it's a very good album if you like that kind of thing. It's very lonely and otherworldly and a bit of rock in there. So one of the tags is melancholy on Bandcamp. So it's a good listen.
Nice.
Yeah, especially in this month.
Absolutely. So my second shout out is no surprise. It's probably legally obligated at this point. But just before recording this, Naoko Koed released Lost Broadcast, a new album from one of our top J Signalwave releases. Just has all that great stuff you love about, first of all, Signalwave, and then Signalwave from somebody raised in an entirely different culture. Makes it feel much more personal. Great samples, really interesting production, really enjoyable listen. If you like any of the Japanese Signalwave that we've talked about before, it's up there with any of that.
Nice. Yeah, no, I'll definitely have to listen to it. My next shout out is one that came out last year, but I have been listening to it ever since it came out. It is Mount Shrine's Lost Leaves collection. This is a 3.5-hour album of various B-sides and lost tracks and unproduced material that Cryo Chamber released. Of course, Mount Shrine passed away because of COVID a couple of years ago, but I was recently on a plane going to a friend's wedding, and boy, this is, you want music to fall asleep to on a plane, like you cannot get better than this. Like rainy sounds and just soft radio static and voices you can't quite make out, and just the nice synth pads. It is just perfect ambient music for that. And just to feel, just to disassociate late at night while you're staring into the void.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's perfect.
Also, Cryo Chamber legally obligated recommendation, probably.
Yeah.
So we're very good on the second one we lined up there. For my third and final album I really like. Little shout out. Not that they need a shout out from us, but Against the Fallen Night by Sungazer, which is a jazz experimental electronic music project from, I don't know, former YouTuber Adam Neely and his drummer friend Sean Crowder. Ton of guests on this. You got your Jared Yee solo, tenor solos. He's a phenomenal saxophonist. Josh De La Victoria, who's a cool guitarist, but has kind of gotten sucked into doing like a lot of shitty jazz metal. And this is like much more interesting than any of that. No offense. It's just, some of his other projects are less interesting, but he just is on like 2 tracks. He's just a guest spot. But overall, yeah, electronic fusion jazz, very modern. Feels, I agree with somebody on our Discord said that it felt more sincere and a little less like jazz mimi, kind of getting away from everything just kind of being like a joke or like, I don't know. It's just, it does feel like a more serious album. And it's really exciting to see them getting a lot of steam. You know, they're playing with Hugh Jacks now and everything. So just came out, I think, a week or 2 ago is the time of recording. It's also really, really good.
My last shout out is a music video that I've seen on not just the Night Clerk Discord, but other Discords as well. It is spreading. This is Blood Incantation by the Stargate. And it is a 20-minute epic synthesis of science fiction and folk horror and metal, of course, where there's, you know, armored warriors fighting to the death, hallucinatory religious visions, blood, and some incantations. It is very much a Merkborg kind of music video and death folk, cosmic, psychedelic, heavy electronic metal.
So this has been going around. I haven't actually listened to this yet, so that's interesting.
Yeah, no, the music videos, you got to watch the music video. It's like a little short film of just like crazy, hallucinatory metal bullshit. Like it's great. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those are our 6 other albums you should check out. There's countless dozens more. So let us know what you're into. And with that behind us, now it's time to journey into Legoland. And our opening sample was a bit from track 4, 6022, Horse Cart. And I sort of picked this because it's the most, I don't know, what I think of as like traditional dungeon synth to me.
Yeah.
It's like big warm synths, little higher pitched, little sharper timbre, like leads throughout. Sort of an early track that I think sets the mood.
Yeah. Yeah, the openings for that track is kind of ominous, you know, for especially it's called Horse Cars. Like, this is a little dark. But yeah, this is primo dungeon synth.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There's a couple like this that I think in this block, it's very layered throughout.
Yeah.
But I guess this early block of like the first, I don't know, 5-ish tracks, I think do work the most in terms of setting like dungeon synth expectations, you know. If you've never listened before, you know, we always talk about genre just as like a marketing term or like a setting expectations term. It's not prescriptive. It's kind of descriptive after the fact. But like just from the intro, you're hit with like big, huge, majestic soundscapes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like these little high-pitched synth leads that are kind of like magical or like mysterious or mystical, or sort of they're what they're evocative of. Mm-hmm. A lot of the synth leads are like Baroque-ish or like harpsichord kind of sounding. Not exactly, but that sort of like sharp, short attack.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's, you know, like the opening track is very majestic for a dungeon synth album. But like one of the things you start noticing right away is that has these kind of sounds that are, I don't know, atypical for a lot of dungeon synth, a lot of like sci-fi kind of phaser sweeps and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the opening track is almost like a sampler track, lots of variation. But you're right, like with the harpsichord, gets almost baroque at times. And it kind of is sort of like a teaser of the whole album. It's like you're going to be hearing a lot of variation. You're going to be hearing a lot of different things in this album. But like the Bandcamp version of the album has, of course, a lot of narration and alternating tracks as the wizard begins narrating the story of this quest to the dragon, his little familiar little buddy.
Yeah.
So it's not every single track is like that, but like there's a lot of like, track 2 is just like like a minute of narration or something like that. Legend of the Hollow Shroud 1. Yeah.
There's a few of those that are in the movie. Those are the animated talking parts we were talking about, which is, thank you for bringing that up and reminding me. There's kind of like 2 versions of this album, which is the film primary one we're talking about, which has all this narration voiceover. Because even on the Bandcamp, I said you should consume it on YouTube, but even the Bandcamp has like the storytelling parts, but I think you really need the visuals to like really get the full effect, just because they're so impressively put together. But then there is also an alternate dialogue-less version of this album that has a few bonus tracks, but largely has the same tracks, but none of the dialogue.
Yeah.
So if you do want like just a pure listening experience without anyone talking at you, that's also an option. Although I think that's only on YouTube. I don't think that's on the Bandcamp.
I wonder if they're going to put it on Bandcamp eventually.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. And the Bandcamp, but like the Bandcamp, the instrumental no dialogue version is like 5 or 6 minutes shorter than the original. So there's not that much dialogue. There's not that much narration, but no, but there's also some tracks that have talking over them, and that's like removed. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, especially the last track, which I definitely
get to. Yeah, I think that's like the big example.
Yeah. But yeah, as we move forward in the album, we get a lot of like more like medieval music, like track 6, the Supply Wagon. It's very festival, everyone's having a good time, but Ren Fair kind of music. So.
Yeah. It's definitely a festival. Yeah. I agree.
And the very next track, though, we get some more mystery kind of exploration music. Very interesting arpeggio, and he has little monk chanting synth, which I like the little monkly it's very, very fun. Yeah, this is getting into the adventurous part of it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because when we get into some of the more adventurous part, I feel like there's the first sort of entry into like starting to experiment and shift a little through genres and start to like, we're exploring, but we're also exploring away from dungeon synth, right?
Yeah.
So I think starting with track 9 starts to feel more evocative of like video game music to me. There's like a little like flute, woodwind, synth melody that opens that track. I think you said it's reminiscent of Zelda.
Yes.
Which I agree. Any of those classic 90s, like N64, SNES era RPGs, take your pick. And then for me, which I'm going to play a sample from, I really love the sort of VGM feel of track 10, 6074, Black Falcon's Fortress. What stuck out to me in this beat is that towards the end, there's like a very playful melodic beat. It sounds like auxiliary percussion, like marimba, xylophone, and that sort of feel of like this little beat. I don't know, it's just very like playful video game music. I really like it. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, while I'm listening to this over and over again, every time I get to this part, it stands out to me.
I think in the movie, we're starting to get in the part. They start incorporating video game elements, like screenshots. So, like, there's this whole interlay, like, growing up, because this is all about, like, childhood nostalgia and the happiness of imagination. But, like, playing with your Legos intermixes with playing with video games, and all gets muddled together in the kid's head. So it's all just part of the stew.
But like you said, in the film, it also starts to bring in video game elements. So it's, that extra little bit of like really thinking out what you're doing and really tying everything together. It's like, it's just that extra notch above some visual albums that are, here's like a bunch of commercials I liked and here's a bunch of songs I liked.
Well, yeah, I think that the strength there is like Dreamcastle doesn't feel restrained to stick too closely to one genre label, because like one of the things, I really like is that we're bringing in things from medieval music, but also bringing in with like track 12 with like sci-fi sound effects and zaps. Track 12 is, of course, the Knight's Challenge. So that's more dynamic and exciting, and like you can have these kind of sci-fi sound effects in video games even if they're set in the Middle Ages, because that's all the little sound card can do.
But I do love that little synth drone under that track, the Knight's Challenge. But it gets into all the fighting, and then to win the challenge, so there's the procession, and then you get this very like courtyard victorious walking around eating
the track 13, the Knight's procession. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very courtly. But and then of course, as you expect, there's more narration, and then there's like almost another genre switch, not quite, but a little bit like track 15 and 16, which are Bandit Ambush and Wolfpack Tower, get a little more into like synthwave, a little darker. Oh yeah.
Especially, I'm going to cram in a one last sample in, because I really could do it for the whole album. I don't want to get too egregious. But this was another track I loved, which is track 17, 6075 Wolfpack Tower. The reason this track stands out to me, and again, I don't know if it's an influence for them, but it's definitely an evocative for me, is this feels very Genesis era, specifically the Streets of Rage games, which I know I've talked about the soundtracks before. They were some of my favorite as a kid, and they have these R&B like halftime kind of shuffle drums, really amazing synth bass, much more of like a chill. Kind of like laid back, a little behind the beat. So it's really interesting to hear that sort of drum and bass structure that I know from a completely different source. And then all this other like chanting and stuff comes on top of it, and all these other elements that kind of bind it to the rest of the music, so it doesn't feel so foreign, so out of place. Oh yeah. So that's another just track I love. Just that, as soon as those intro drums hit, the first thing I think of is Streets of Rage 2, just personally.
Yeah, no, the track 17 really was the most like unique track on this album, I think, aside from maybe the last track, because it sounds so different from the rest of the album. I would not have guessed that this would have gone in there. It was actually reminding me of like 1980s sexy thriller movies, like the late night, like, ooh, things are dangerous, but also a little bit sexy, like that kind of. Yeah, it's a really fun thing. Really funky synth bass, as you mentioned. Like, I love the sound effects with like the wolves and howling and the owls in the background. Yeah. I also do want to mention, but going back to track 15, I just love I don't know how else to call it, but like the Zen flute, like this guy's a ninja or a martial artist. You would hear in every fucking action movie from the 80s and 90s as just a little shorthand. It's...
I don't know if it's exactly, but I think that's called like a shakuhachi.
Yeah, that's I think that's it. Yeah,
I think that's what that flute is. There's a couple different ones. I don't know if that's exactly it, but in that region.
Yeah. But yeah, no, track 17 is really good. It's just, it really is so different from every other track of this album. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting experimentation or just willingness to try something different, not just repeating the exact same thing for 30 tracks.
Yeah, it's so ambitious, I think, is like a good word for it. And every level, from like the music, the range of music, and producing the whole film associated with it. It's just really, really impressive. Going into, I guess the next track that stood out, really stood out for me. So I don't know if you have anything to say about 19 or 20, but for me, it was 22, Castle Minifigs, which is another like lo-fi beat.
Yeah.
Like a little shuffle drum beat and a little magical synth over it. Not that I had anything against track 19 or track 20.
Track 20, I just want to mention, I like the little, I guess, xylophones that are kind of muffled or like a low pass. It's just kind of like, okay, I like it. It's very whimsical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to the world of wizardly stuff happening.
Yeah. You're definitely back in the Wizards workshop and everything.
Yeah. But yeah, 22 is nice. I like like it's a lo-fi beat. Like it's again, more experimentation, more variation. So 24 is really fun though.
I do like 24 a lot. So I don't know quite have the synth terminology. I don't quite have the synth terminology to exactly describe it, but in the back half of those tracks, there's like high pitched, like around a minute in, like some higher pitched synth come in. They kind of sound like I hate to relate this to other media, but that's just how my mind works. And it's the thing about nostalgia. So I'm going to use your nostalgia piece to be nostalgic about
what
I know, right? Like Echo the Dolphin and that sort of soundtrack.
Well, it's meant to be, unearthly because, this is the ghost. This is the glow in the dark ghost, the Black Monarch's ghost. And so it's supposed to be a little spooky and weird and uncanny. And so, I like those little ghostly synth pads. But like, was this a Echo part dealing with the aliens towards the end? Or
Yeah. So it makes sense of being like otherworldly or kind of magical. It's not, I don't mean like Echo in the sense of, we always talk about like underwater vaporwave or whatever. I don't mean that.
Yeah.
But some of the pieces that do have these kind of, just these like high pitched synths that are a little, otherworldly is the term that's in my head now because you said it and it works perfectly. Steal your words.
Damn.
I know.
Yeah, so we get into track 26, the Forestman's Hideout, and it sounds appropriate for that. It's very light and airy. Got wind, like a lute or some kind
strings,
of string. Yeah, children singing, which is a nice touch. And it's perfectly on point for the track.
I think it goes very well with the next track, Armor Shop, which is also like a nice little town piece of music. Very calm, very peaceful. It's got like naturey water flutes towards the end and the like. But I think then track 29, The Maiden's Cart, is very...
I put intricate. Like,
I can see that. Yeah, I was trying to think about a mood associated with it. It's just very peaceful to me. I think all the like the synth work and everything on top of it, peaceful, not in like the calming ambient sense, but just was very pleasant to listen to.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I think that sounded true of this whole block.
Ordered.
Yeah. I think it's especially coming off some of the like darker, more mysterious kind of tracks ahead of time. This one kind of brings you back, I guess, to me.
Yeah. So track 31, The Black Knight's Castle, is getting to the unearthly sounds. There's a lot of interesting sound effects. There's interesting flute. It really starts building up, switching up like a minute 10 in. Like it's really going down with the drums. Like it's really like,
shit's happening. It's going down.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun with that. But then we get into another like genre shift with, track 32, Dark Dragon's Den is like some outrun, like fight music. Like it is very synthwave. It's again, another track I would not have expected on this album, judging from the description, but it works. And especially because this is like boss fight music because you're dealing with a big dragon. Yeah, it's
very driving, especially when those drums come in. It's like very exciting and driving. I've talked about that sort of 80s pulsing adventure synth where it's kind of like always pushing you forward because it's like slightly, it's probably quantized. It's not actually probably, but it feels like slightly ahead of the beat. Doesn't feel as laid back. Yeah, so like boss fight music, adventure music. Again, another one of those tracks that like just every time it came up, on a re-listen, your brain locks in on it.
Oh yeah, we should mention also the film does actually grab some clips from various fantasy movies from the 80s. There's one I don't recognize what it is, but it's some people fighting a dragon. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Oh yeah, because there's like some Princess Bride clips, I think, and stuff.
Yeah. It samples from several movies and sort of thing, but like it perfectly works. But yeah, then we get into sort of the end tracks. Track 33, Forestman's Crossing, is after Un Jeune Filet, a medieval, I totally butchered the pronunciation. It's medieval French folk tune and done with synth instrumentation, especially with the enhanced lo-fi crackle. So like, yeah, Dreamcastle is just showing off their chops here, like just stunting on us. But yeah, I'm a fan of synth. Like again, the synthesizer is the instrument of fantasy, and like, you're not trying to perfectly reenact or recreate history. You're supposed to imagine a fantastic history, a alternate, history, one with dragons and actual wizards and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and this is the music for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we get into our last track of the main one, which is track 34, Meditations on Anxiety, Nostalgia, and One's Childhood Bedroom. And the music underlying this is very like melancholic, nostalgic synth.
Ambient-ish, yeah.
Even just as a music track, because there's the dialogue-free version on the bonus track, it works really well. I especially love like the first like 45 seconds, just as like rising slow attack synths coming in and kind of sitting under everything. That's always something I really, really like. And then, you get a speech of somebody kind of working through their relationship to nostalgia, consumerism and nostalgia, the reality of their childhood, and finding comfort in those memories.
Yeah, it's what I've been saying, the anxiety versus comfort dichotomy. And I mean, I found it a very touching monologue about very well performed. It's not done by Dreamcastle. They credit someone else for it. A Hazelwood Spindlewort. But it sounds too sincere to be like crafted fiction. But like, I mean, yeah, this is it sucks growing up and having to deal with adulthood realities compared to the innocence and safety of childhood, for some of us at least. And it's a voicemail. It's posited as a voicemail, so there's no resolution. This person is just like, yeah, this is where I am. Bye. That's how the album ends. It's like, yeah, you had safety in your imagination when you played Legos, but now you don't. That's it. But yeah, I thought that was a perfect capstone for this album because there's always that nostalgic, wistful reminiscing that's slightly painful, but it's better to remember than to forget. So
so overall that brings us to the end of the album, the end of the film. I don't know. I feel like I talked it out mostly. I don't have a big capstone point. It's a super ambitious, super interesting, varied, high effort, everything I love about the genre. Then people out there making outsider art about something that matters to them. Yeah. And it's criminal not to check it out. Yeah. And I think other people have realized that too, given the attention it's getting. It's well deserved.
Yeah, definitely check it out. At least watch it on YouTube. Maybe not like intently, but just put it on while you're going about your business, and I think you'll be watching as well as listening. Yeah, it's exactly. It's the kind of, this is why I'm into vaporwave and this kind of music, and is for diamonds hidden out there, not in the rough, but in the in the vast swamp of content. It's nice to see a shining little gem like this.
Yeah, I first heard about this. I think you kind of discovered it on your own, but I do want to shout out Celadon Dream Suite, who pointed me to this album specifically. They said, this is a great album. You should check it out.
Yeah, I subscribed to Dreamcastle after Amy Wave because I just liked their take on the...
I'm just bad at managing my Bandcamp emails. So
I subscribed on YouTube. Like, I got...
Oh, yeah. Well, I do that on the Night Clerk.
Yeah, you got to manage. Now you have to have multiple YouTube accounts to manage your recommendations. So you're going to be watching a lot of this kind of stuff. You better quarantine it to one account so it doesn't contaminate the recommendations for stuff you want to see. Yeah, it's complicated.
Thank you so much for listening and for making it this far into our spotlight episode of Lego Castle and a few shout outs. To reiterate, please go check this out. It's incredibly cool. It's really interesting. And just going to repeat myself. It deserves all the recognition it gets. But next episode, it's been about 6 months, so it's time for one of our patron Discord crawls. People are posting all kinds of music recommendations all the time into our Patreon Discord. And it's time to go back through them and check it out because I've been busy. It's hard to respond to all of them or list all of them. So it's a nice excuse to start doing that. If you're interested in that or any of our other bonus episodes, they are available on Patreon, Nightclerk Radio at patreon.com. Got like 40 some bonus episodes, couple essays, cool Discord community. It's worth checking out. You can also find us on whatever social media you currently doom scroll on. That's, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. Co-host is going away. I found out. I completely forgot we had a co-host until I got an email that co-host is exporting our data before shutting down. So rip, Facebook, if you're one of those people, website, nightclerkradio.com, nightclerkradio@gmail.com. You can basically interact with us anywhere there. Wherever you do choose to check us out, take a moment to click whatever little algorithmic signifier it's got, the liking, the rating, the reviewing, whatever you want. It really helps a lot. And most importantly, we always say build community. Like I said, I wouldn't have even heard about this album if it hadn't been recommended to me by somebody in the community that we've been working on building. So go out, talk to people about music you like. Hopefully it's Lego Castle. And maybe even hang out and build some Legos together.
Ooh.
It's a fun pastime.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.